Hey guys, so I thought that I would do a video talking about some of my favorite shows that I consider to have bad endings. So these are shows that are all around really great shows, and I highly recommend that everybody watch them because they're amazing up until the last season. So I wouldn't say that having a bad last season means that you shouldn't enjoy the rest of the show. And if you only want to hear about one show in particular, I will leave timestamps down below. So I'm not going to go too deep into every show because otherwise we'll be here for a very long time. But feel free to leave a comment down below telling me why you didn't like the last season if you agree with me, or why you don't agree with me. So number one, I feel like most people probably will agree with me on this because it's one of the most widely agreed upon shows with bad endings, Game of Thrones. So the main reason Game of Thrones failed in the last season, I think a lot of people agree on, is that it was simply too rushed. So this will include spoilers. So Daenerys, I feel like her going all evil queen, we could see it coming from the very beginning. A lot of people disagree on that, but I very strongly feel like they were always setting her up to be the villain. But she was so sympathetic that it actually made a lot of people root for the villain, and they didn't realize that they were rooting for the villain until the last moment. And so they thought, okay, that's out of character. But no, I thought the show was actually being very clever because it showed us the origin of a villain and how people can get to being like that because they go through so much trauma and pain. And it was so well done. It's just that they rushed it. That last season, when we finally start to see her with her mask off in a way, like the worst parts of her, where she can't really hide anymore who she is, I feel like they needed at least a full season to explore her downfall and for her character arc to really take its time to tell that story. But instead they rushed it and we got the result that we got. And then Bran, I mean, seriously, Bran on the throne, that guy just creeps me out with his like creepy serial killer stare. It should have been Jon. I really hate the way that they did Jon dirty in the end. I feel like, yes, he never wanted to be king, that's true, but just the way I felt his character after everything that he had done for the kingdom and everybody, I felt like it was very disrespectful for them to just send him off the way that they did. And also Jaime running back to Cersei instead of staying with Brienne of Tarth, whatever. I feel like that undoes his character development, and he was one of my favorite characters because his development was so well done and fleshed out the way that I was hoping Dany's would have been. So those are some of the reasons that I was disappointed in the last season. Like I said, let me know your reasons down below if I've left any out. So Once Upon a Time is number two. Look, this is a show that I feel like is one of those cozy comfort shows for me. And I've watched it quite a few times now, and every single time, as much as I love the beginning of the show, I can never make it through the end of season 7. I've only done that once, and that's saying something considering how much I like this show. So basically this is a show about the fairy tale creatures, people we grew up with, like Snow White and Cinderella. What if they were stuck in our world? And it sounds a bit weird, but it's a really great show that puts clever, complex spins on the characters, and the writing of this show is so well done. The way they tie everything together, and there are darker tones to a lot of the episodes, which I do enjoy. It feels like it's definitely not in Grimm Brothers territory of what their books originally were, but it's not Disney either. It's somewhere in the middle. So in the last season, we had all new characters basically. There were a few original characters that were still there, like Hook, Rumpelstiltskin, but Regina, but they weren't playing themselves. They were playing new characters. And it was like they were devoid of their personality completely. Emma, Snow White, Prince Charming, they weren't in the show any longer. Little Henry was replaced by adult Henry, who had basically no personality, and he felt really miscast. They had already told the story of Cinderella, and they reintroduced that story in a way that I just felt like was not clever at all. And like I said, their writing is usually so good when it comes to this sort of stuff, but They just forced her into the storyline. The actress, the character was so annoying. So was her kid. She had no chemistry with adult Henry, and that whole story was such a huge part of the last season, and it just felt like it was devoid of anything interesting. I don't even know why they decided to go in that direction. Well, I do. They were obviously trying to have a full circle moment from season 1 with Henry's sort of lost his belief and he has to have his kid come and help him believe, just like Emma. And that could have been well done if they'd gone in a different direction, but it just felt lazy and like a copy paste. That Regina wasn't Regina was upsetting because she is my favorite character. The fact that they weren't in Storybrooke and that they were in the city felt really weird. This show should not be in a city. Overall, this just felt like a spin-off to me, not like an actual season of Once Upon a Time. So number 3 is Nashville. So Nashville is a show about some up-and-coming musicians and already established musicians in the city of Nashville. And I feel like this is such an amazing show because of the music in it. I feel like this music should have gotten so much more recognition than it did. There's great performances, characters that you really invest in, but then the last season just dropped the ball. And I'm not going to say that this is the worst on the list. Once Upon a Time's ending was worse. But basically, Raina James is the heart of this show and she dies. And in the last season, we have her boyfriend, Deacon, trying to pick up the pieces. He's been so in love with her for so long. Their romance was so central to the show. So seeing him trying to pick up the pieces and move on with his life was heartbreaking. But at the same time, he finally does. He meets a new woman, Jessie. And you start to finally warm up to the idea of them together. But then they just drop that storyline out of the blue. And Avery and Juliet are my favourite couple on the show, but their breakup to make-up storyline is so played out at this point. The whole thing with the cult, I did find interesting, but it was very soap opera-ish. This show is a soap opera with country music, and you will love it even if you don't like country music. And, it's just like Once Upon a Time is a soap opera with fairy tales, but, it's still done really well. But still, the whole dynamic of the breaking up, it just was so overdone at this point. And then we have Maddie, Raina's daughter, and her storyline with her boyfriends, I just found really boring. The whole teenager subplot. Usually I can find them interesting still, but in this case it just felt so juvenile, and I just wish that they had given it a better ending because it was such a good show in its prime. So Bates Motel is number 4. So this is a TV show. This is a prequel to the movie Psycho. It's got a gothic horror vibe, the whole show, the characters, the sets, the locations. It's all so well done at the beginning anyway. And the heart of the show is obviously the twisted relationship between Norman and Norma. And we have Norma be such a huge part of the show. And obviously, as a prequel to Psycho, we knew where it was going, that she was obviously going to end up dying, setting up the events of Psycho, but still, when it finally happens, it feels anticlimactic. And the way that they handled the last season with Norman just sort of having these delusions that she's still alive, it was good as an idea, but the execution wasn't done well. And I like that they made her meaner because obviously she had to be like that for him to really just completely go full-on delusional serial killer, but still it feels like they made her a little too not Norma, and Norma was the heart of the show. And also just simply the fact that Norma never had to take accountability for what she had done to Norman. I really would have liked to see that moment where she has to fully comprehend the monster that she's created, and it feels like she got, I don't want to say let off easy because obviously she was killed by her son, but still she never had to have that reckoning moment of look what I've really done. Like she saw it, but she had her head stuck in the sand of the whole show. But Dylan, my favorite character, who deserves all the good things to happen to him, got a good ending, so there was that at least. So Gotham is number 6. So Gotham is an origin story of Bruce Wayne and his journey to becoming Batman, and it is such a good show. My favorite character is definitely Selena. The villains are done so well. My favorite villain is the Penguin. Just their characters are so well written. The set design, the locations of this show has a sort of a retro, vintage, timeless quality to the show. It really makes you root for the villains. They're what stand out in this show. But Bruce Wayne is also really well done. And I love his relationship with Selena, and their whole Batcat thing is so adorable. But then in the last season, he just leaves her for 10 years, which is canon, yes, but it was the way that it was done without him saying goodbye after everything they've been through together, knowing that he was the only thing that she had in this world. It was heartbreaking to see him so cruel and so out of character. And I know a lot of fans felt that way. And when he came back in the last episode, just expecting her to forgive him without any apology or anything, it just felt really like a slap in the face, because they've built up Batcat to be this central romance to the story. And yeah, also just the fact that it was rushed. Like Game of Thrones, it was meant to go for longer. It was meant to have 7 seasons they had scripted, and they only did 4.5 seasons. It was so incredibly rushed. I would say even worse than Game of Thrones, if that's possible. And, you know, Jervis Tetch, Victor Zsasz, so many characters never really got a concluding episode or any sort of send-off. And we were introduced to characters like Arthur Penn, who was going to be their ventriloquist, and Sophia Falcone, and they had storylines set up for them, and it was so obvious they were meant to do more with these characters. And then it just stopped. And I would say on the list, this is my biggest disappointment in terms of just what we could have had. So number 6 is Westworld. So Westworld is this futuristic theme park with robots, and it's like a robotic Western. I know that makes no sense, but if you watch it, you'll know what I'm talking about. And it's basically a place where the rich can come and live out their cowboy fantasies, which sometimes have very dark undertones. Let's just say some of the things that are done to these robots are hard to watch. But that's the whole point of the story. Do robots have rights? And the first season was so well done. So this is more of an honorary mention. I don't really feel like I should put it on the list, because full disclosure, I only got halfway through season 2. It's just that this show was so good in season 1. I felt like I had to put it on the list anyway. So this show is based on a book by Michael Crichton, who obviously wrote the Jurassic Park movie. So a big theme for him, just like in Jurassic Park, is consequences of science gone too far. And the whole of season 1 felt like it was building up for this big revenge of the robots type thing, but then it just felt like we didn't really get it. I don't know, it just felt very anticlimactic for me. If you've seen the end of it, let me know what you think of it down below. Is it worth a rewatch? Anyway, let me know if there's any shows that I haven't put on this list that you feel like have really bad endings that are really good shows. Please like, comment, subscribe, all of that YouTube stuff, and I'll see you in the next video.